An article I want to read right here from my Destiny players. If your cake is trash, nobody wants to eat it. At a tough time for Destiny 2, Bungie drops an exotic mission promising vampire vibes, a cool shotgun, and a finale with bite. This is from Austin Woods here, interview of some of the Destiny 2 developers, guys, that we're going to be looking into right now. So let's see what they have to say. Some Destiny 2 players are, we could fairly say, not in the highest spirits. Familiar events, RNG frustrations, player count woes, shallow loot pools, and endless bug complaints. Plenty of them coming from me, have blunted community sentiment. That's especially true for this episode after the all-time high of the Final Shapes release. Folks could use a little pick-me-up. With Act 3 of Episode 2 Revenant, Bungie's rolled out a new exotic mission called Kel's Fall. It's got a slick exotic shotgun called Slayer's Fang. More of the vampire energy players have been hoping to see this episode, and some long-awaited narrative climax. A fresh mission to run with the clan is a good way to get me to log in, and I do love an exotic shotgun. I don't know the staying power it will have, and this update definitely isn't a cure-all, but it is a welcome shot of stuff to do and see. Now, before the mission release, I spoke to several developers at Bungie about the making of Kel's Fall, its headlining shotgun, the impact of the latest narrative beats, and the surprising intricacy of the playable Scorn organ, the Scorgan, at the core of this vampire keep. We also discussed community sentiment, player fatigue, live service challenges, the catch-22 of time-gating content. Kel's Fall isn't the biggest exotic mission ever, but it is stylish and deceptively layered space with enough secrets to hopefully keep us invested for a little bit. Well, I mean, let me just be real, by the way. What was it? Echoes, that was supposed to be, quote-unquote, the biggest exotic mission ever made. Anytime you have an exotic mission that's layered into the narrative, Bungie will always make it as stupidly easy as possible because they don't want folks not being on board for the narrative. And so that's why we have not gone, none of these exotic missions are like crazy exotic missions, crazy challenging. They're just kind of like you run in there, you do the things. For the most part, everything's very straightforward, and you're good. That's because it's tied to the narrative, right? It's overlapped. And that Destiny 2's Vampire. Bungie wanted us to do something with vampires for a while. With Kel's Fall, that vision comes across with the Castlevania and Splatterhouse flair, Forsaken's Fickle acting as a Dracula, and the Barons returning for surely one last act. Magic mirrors, hidden doors, and undead hordes complete the look with a huge spiral staircase for good measure. Activity designer Willie Chang says they wanted to integrate the illusion and deception baked into vampire tropes and legends, turning away from the definitely well-explored blooded stakes and imagining things like the mission's alternate mirror world and a rogues gallery of devious allies. One of Fickle's trusty rogues, the Trickster, has a chance to appear in other boss encounters. One of the ways Bungie wanted to add greater variance to Kel's Fall alongside things like random you know what? I'm still calling it braziers. I don't give a random braziers tied to puzzles. I don't give a shit. I like the fuck out of that brazier. We're looking for ways to add variety without just building a ton of content that is linear, Ching says. We're looking for these different ways to build permutations into each run so that the second, third time that you go through the basement dungeon area, you're not always looking for the same stuff. That sort of stuff is more sustainable to build. I think it's doing more than what we've done in the past. Kisco continues supporting those replays week over week. Episode 2 does not have the time gating, like you mentioned, and so the player can really play it at their leisure. The value here, he reiterates, is the ability to take things as you want and dip into more activities in a session. When we're thinking about how we support this new paradigm, I think it's through that variety. And we've learned lessons from previous episodes and seasons as well. And I think we are applying that through the variety and surprises in the exotic mission that we're doing now. I mean, I think the mechanic was cool. Can I just say that? The mechanic was cool. Shooting the mirror, jumping into it, like literally having the text go backwards because it's mirrored. You know what I mean? I mean, it was cool. It just, my only issue with the exotic missions is I feel they are still overly simplified when they are tied to the seasonal narrative. Because Bungie doesn't want to they want to make sure anyone who bought the season pass or in this episode, whatever, you are able to get through the content and experience the climax for yourself. A world without time gating. A recurring thing with this episode and the rollout of Kel's Fall has been Bungie's decision to do away with time gating and see how it feels. This was a later pivot in the episode 2 plans, and we've seen the good and bad of it. We are free to eat the whole cake at once, but inevitably there's a chorus of wait, that's it? When we run out of cake in one sitting, sometimes quite abruptly, this is true for this episode model itself to some extent. I mean, that is, yeah. But come on, God. Is it really content to run the same mission 12 different times? You know what I mean? It's like, yes, I get where you're coming from, but running the same exotic mission over and over, you know what I mean? That's just disrespectful. I would say the one redeeming quality about Revenant, probably over everything else, is that we didn't have the time gates. Thank God. You know, because I think people would have been really upset. But isn't that what games like the First Descendant do? Okay, first up, and nothing against First Descendant. There are certain standards that you hold certain games to. And I want to point out something. Like, I do hold Destiny to a higher standard, partly due to the fact that it's paid content. It's not free. Secondly, I hold them to the standard that they themselves have set. It's not like I'm just like, hey, you need to do everything that we want as a community and we're just pulling this straight out of our ass. No, it's like we reach back into like the arsenal of previous seasons that Bungie has really nailed. And we're like, this was really good. And, you know, could you mimic that? Now, the challenging thing with the new model is players have clear expectations about what things were in the past in terms of how they interact with the vendors, or what the pacing of the story is, or the amount of content, says senior design lead Thomas Farnsworth. And with that episodic model, there's Act 1, and it's all focused around Onslaught. Act 2 is all focused around Tomb of Elders. Act 3 is focused around the exotic. I think some players are going to appreciate that. And others are going to feel like they have smaller chunks to focus on initially versus having them all to play later. Those are some of the things that we're going to have to look at and be like, is this the right model? Yeah, I don't even know why this conversation is taking place. We're going back to the seasonal model. What are the tweaks we can make to that going forward? I think live service gameplay models are literally one of the hardest challenges. I think you can look out in the broader game industry right now, and it's rough out there. And I really feel for a lot of things going on in the game industry. And that's something that is going to be one of our biggest challenges. What's the right way to give players what they want and let them have agency of experience, while also finding what you were saying about the sustainable path forward. You can't have one part of the game bear all the weight of someone's engagement. Farnsworth continues. If everyone's time is only focused on the episode and not on playing the core game or other aspects of the release, they're going to feel like they're going to eat everything and be done. So I know going forward, we're going to be investing in as many areas of the game as we can to make sure that players have something to do for each mood that they're in, whether they want to engage with the story, or they want to engage with an exotic mission, or they want to play the core game, or they want to play PvP. And I think that's the challenge, making sure that if players feel like they've gobbled up everything somewhere, they've got something else they can hop over to. I would also add that this is in some ways a good problem to have, narrative lead Jerome Burnage adds, because this is only a problem if your cake tastes good, right? If your cake is trash, nobody wants to eat it. It is not a discussion at all. I will say that's my biggest concern right now. My biggest concern is no one's going to want to taste the cake anymore. I mean, that's for Destiny. The other things is, it's like this statement right here. We're going to be investing in many areas of the game as we can to make sure that players have something to do for each mood that they're in. Whether they want to engage. Okay, so these are your options. These are the things they're going to be investing in, or at least from this sentence. Whether they want to engage with the story, or they want to engage with an exotic mission, or they want to play the core game, or they want to play PvP. All right, I really feel like we're at that point, Bungie, where we cannot box ourselves in, or you cannot box yourselves in to just this. These are the areas of investment. I think it goes further than that. And I think Path of Exile is a great example with their developers. Man, they've just kept spitting out content. They've got this huge rollout, and of course they've had all this, you know, building and developing, and you know, Destiny's in this weird thing where it's just continually developing while it's doing and spitting it out. You know what I mean? But like, this is where like those MMO aspects really start to count. This is what MMO aspects are you looking for, Cross? I mean, dude, it would be cool if suddenly it was like, hey, starting from the day, here's your ship. You can customize it. You don't have to go to the Enclave to weapon craft. You can craft right here. You could hold all your gear. A lot of what I'm going to suggest, by the way, is going to be stuff that's in Warframe. And so I'm going to make a lot of people just, you know, sick. But it's just true. There's just a lot of great MMO features that are present in Warframe that would do really, really well inside of Destiny. Matter of fact, take everything that's in Warframe and put that shit in Destiny. Those just like MMO features, man. I mean, that stuff like that's fun. The whole like new player experience, like what we've stated about that is that people don't do things for free. You know, there needs to be some sort of like a true commendation system that if you're a veteran player and you help someone through a Grandmaster Nightfall or a raid and you get commendations for that, they can literally commend you for you doing that. And then you could take those commendations and go spinning on stuff. That would be incredible. Even if it was something just like to put on your class item to be like, you know, I helped, you know, these people, a little bit of a flex, or even a title we even went a step further and even said, like, I know Bungie, you guys were like immediately shot this idea down. But imagine if you help people through raids, you can get silver to spend in the Eververse store. And some of you are like, that's not possible. They're a developer. They wouldn't, you know what I mean? It is definitely possible. You just got to put the systems in place to do so. I mean, it would incentivize people. And see, suddenly, we don't have a toxic community anymore. Why? Well, it's hard to get commendations if you're a dick. I'd be a lot nicer. Hey, man, how's it going? Oh, yeah, let me explain this encounter. Instead of, hey, shut the fuck up. Stand in the corner and shoot your hand cannon at anything that moves. I got this. No, they're going to be commending me. All right? They want to drop. I need commendations. Suddenly, it's going to be like, come here, little guardian. Let me show you how to do this encounter. Now, let me show you how to do. Look, is it fake nice? Yeah. But the point is I'm being incentivized for it. And just like every other MMORPG, or more specifically, Final Fantasy XIV, you get a currency for those commendations. And man, those things matter. Suddenly, everybody's being as nice as they can. And one thing Final Fantasy community has been known for is being a very nice community. And they're not doing it just out of the goodness of their hearts, guys. They're doing it because they want their commendations. Now, for all the doom and gloom going around, not entirely undeservedly, I think the cake is very much not trash. I've become an even more hardcore casual Destiny 2 player since the final shape. I log in when there's new stuff to do or collect, or when my friends want to do a dungeon or a raid or a GM, and I let the game chill otherwise. Playing other games remains the ultimate Destiny 2 hack. And the new stuff is generally fun when it's new. On the narrative side, the Kel's Fall putting a bow on this episode's Revenant says, our only goal is to have an act that is emotionally resonant, that does justice to the world and the characters, and does right by the character arcs. On that front, I look forward to reading the response to the handling of Aramis, which I actually thought was good, whose resolution, anticipated since Beyond Light in 2020, was more of a redemption arc than I ever expected. Speaking of, there's a greater push for finality as Destiny 2 gears up for its next expansion, which is looking to be key. So, yes, I actually felt like the narrative was pretty good, and it sets things up for a potential future Fallen World and Reese. We killed Fickrel, spoilers, and Aramis had a redemption arc, which was believable and actually good. The only thing that was not believable is that if you go below where Ida and them are, Aramis is actually still in the jail cell. So some bugs didn't get ironed out. She's supposed to have escaped, took the shard. You know what I mean? Mithrax is also still hooked up to the things, and despite him being healed. So little things like that needs to get fixed, right? But I thought the narrative was good. I thought it was way better than how Maya's ending was. And it's very obvious they want to make Maya, a big bad at some point in the future for us. Aramis, I think, is what's going to happen with her is we're going to have Reese. We're going to go to that world at some point. And, I wouldn't be surprised if we end up doing Reese and Fundament and, whatever else. You know what I mean? It was our desire to leave all of the characters pretty settled at the end of this episode, Furnish says. We had another hanging thread with Mithrax and the influence of Nezrak's curse on him, which plays big into this season. And then his relationship both with Ido, his daughter, and then also with Aramis, who has different ideas of Elixir unity or Elixir nationalism than Mithrax does. And so we really wanted to leave Mithrax, Fickrel, and Aramis in kind of a settled place so that we didn't have those threads flapping in the wind anymore. So we turned our attention to some really exciting unnamed things in the future. I will say this. Yes, I am happy with the narrative, and we dealt with Fickrel. I still feel like the whole we fix Mithrax, like Aramis immediately took the shard and cleansed Mithrax, and maybe that was always necessary. I mean, I guess that's believable, I suppose. I was kind of hoping there would be something a little deeper there, like battling Nezrak and some sort of, subconscious battleground or something like that. You know what I mean? All right, there's always a tension between finding a satisfying button or bow to put on a storyline and leaving oneself room to grow, leaving threads to pick up later on down the road, he adds. Every time we do any single mission, every time we write any single script, we're always asking ourselves, where do we want to leave the player in relation to the characters? And sometimes we look back and I think we might wish that we had settled some things that we left open. And then other times we wish that we have left ourselves a little more room to maneuver. Now, the Scorgan. As you play Kel's Fall and finish these character arcs, you'll find score music notes crawled on the walls. These may end up being a bigger lure for some players than the act finale. Technical designer and Scorgan mastermind Ashley Baker explains that the castle's central instrument, its size and majesty crystallized by a faithful piece of concept art, is slowly repaired run over run. That is true, actually. Players discover new notes of pipes are restored by some mystery character scurrying around the castle. So if you're able to blast through the entire Act 3 story day 1, you'll have a fully fixed organ, she says. I love when games make me bust out some pen and paper, and I get the feelings the Scorgan will do that. You're trying to find the notes at different locations and where they are in those locations, and the order that they're in, matches the order of the melody that can be played on the Scorgan. Baker adds. I tell you something that was a letdown for me, man. We went through the trailers. We tracked down note combinations that were in the trailer, like the trailer pictures, and we thought that that was going to be something. I don't think it was. I mean, we inputted a bunch, and I don't think it was. Now, some melodies may unlock secret passages, while others might screw you over, and then there's some extra secret ones for our music-savvy players. If they can figure those out, they might find a couple extra reactions. Now, the Scorgan has a full octave for Guardians to play with notes meticulously concocted from over a dozen sound layers. Senior music editor Adam Calabajan tells me these sounds include a PVC trombone, a pipe organ from Sweden, light bulbs, sonar pings, and even some percussion from a Destiny 1 track dating back to the House of Wolves. The broken notes throw in an antique car horn and a busted cello. You'll hear Scorgan notes throughout the episode 2 score if you listen for them. A little extra juice that helps sell the vampire vibe, Calabagian says. Baker expects and hopes to see players use the full-fledged instrument to write and play their own songs. Enabling that kind of user-generated content was central to the Scorgan's design. The point that music theory and notation was woven into the Scorn runes. Now, making it replayable. We are, of course, going to be playing through Kel's Fall several times to fully max out Slayer's Fang and polish off the story beats. It's the cornerstone of Act 3. Yet before it was even released, I saw some players expressing exhaustion over another mission grind loop. There's valid criticism to be made of this delivery, but some Destiny 2 players truly seem to hate having to play Destiny 2. I don't think we just don't want to run the same, like, I don't like waiting a week to then just be like, now we're going to do the mission again. And next week we're going to do it again. He ain't wrong, TBH. I mean, yeah, but it's like, I thought this rollout was better because you could get all 4 exotic catalysts and knock it all out. You know what I mean? Very hazards and puzzles can help, but since I hadn't yet played the mission, I wanted to learn more about how Bungie is building activities to suit multiple playthroughs, especially in the context of the untime gated era we're currently in. Kisco points to the addition of exotic missions to the player journey and how this affected their view of what these missions look like. It's this delicate balance of creating something that's not too hard but still holds onto the core essence of what players expect out of the exotic missions, he says, with Kel's Fall being the tent pole for this act. Kisco says Bungie paid special attention to how Fallout runs feels while trying to balance hardcore and casual play patterns. Kel's Fall has some depth, but for pure combat, it is markedly easier than the likes of Whisper or 0 Hour missions, especially in the boss fights. But Kisco says they're open to making demanding missions like those again. I wouldn't say anything is off the table, he affirms, and I know that in a game like this, variety is amazing. We never would want to push something like the idea of a Whisper off the table for those players who enjoy it. We did Hawk Moon, and then it was like, all right, let's bring Presage in, and we brought the version with the timer back in. Some people really liked it, some people don't, and that's okay. Sometimes we're going to cater to certain audiences more than others, and if it's not your cup of tea, that's fine because the next release will probably have something more aligned to them. So all that stuff's on the table, and we have a lot of vehicles to deliver those. It's not just the episodes or the different acts with the episodes. We also have our future stuff that we're really excited about in Frontiers. All right, what did we learn from this article, everybody? What did we learn here? That cake is everything. I mean, so the article kind of, from my mind, was just kind of going over the process of how episodes have kind of changed and what they're looking to do going forward. I think the reality is, like, Bungie already acknowledged this, considering that they are going back to the seasonal model and a 3-month rollout versus the 4-month rollout. Whether they continue to do some form of time gating, I don't know. My thing is, like, what I don't want Bungie to do is go to the drawing table from this episode and say, okay, we've hit our lowest player counts ever since maybe Curse of Osiris. It must be because we don't have time gates. I don't feel like they will, but you never know. And that is completely incorrect, because if there was one thing at the top of the list that I thought was good about this episode, was that we didn't have time gates. It was nice to hit what we needed to hit. And it also just kind of kept you in the loop, because sometimes whenever you have time gates and there's like very little moving in the story and you just repeat it week after week, you kind of lose track of the narrative a bit. And so it's not as impactful. And I felt like having everything roll out in that single day, it felt more impactful, especially the conclusion here to Revenant. It was just nice to boom, we've got that conclusion. We're all on the same page. There we go. I think outside of that, you know, to me, with this kind of, especially like the last statement being said here, is that we also have our future stuff. I'm really excited about Frontier. So I just feel like all things just come to Frontiers, man. We'll see if this next episode is going to be good, which will be Heresy. And Heresy is going to have us fixing up the Dreadnought. Are we going to get that same ramp up that we got with, you know, Into the Light last year, going into the final shape, Pantheon and all that stuff? I don't know. I don't know if the hype is going to be there. And you know, the other thing is too, is just like, do Bungie feel like they're in a good place right now? Like, do they feel like their content model is going to be sustainable? And are they happy with the current player retention? I don't know. You know, those are definitely not the things being addressed in this, because these are people that are working hands-on with this episode. But I'm curious to know how they feel about it.
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.